Please listen carefully.
Welcome back to the Focus Target Podcast. This is your captain speaking, Captain Smiley, back with you once again with my co-pilots, Van and Shy. What's going on, gentlemen?
Hello.
Sorry, I'm
Up,
not
buddy?
sure.
Are you rocking this captain thing?
The captain thing's
Like
not. It
going
wasn't
forward?
just a fad. Yeah, we're going.
Okay,
going
so
for
it's
it.
staying.
Well, I mean, I named every character in Lost Ark Captain Smiley with some sort of thing. So I'm
Right.
really trying to make it the new persona. And I wanted it, take us a little bit aside here, right? Like we do this podcast. I'm Smiley on the podcast because that's what I was way back in FFXI days, but I haven't been able to get Smiley as a character name in an MMO for like 10 years. Like it's always taken by the time I make my character. So like there's never really a tie from me on the podcast to any of my characters in game. I mean, this is a popular podcast. Probably a lot of people listen to this. What if somebody saw me running, they wouldn't know who I was? They see Shyrol or Van Dana running through a game. They're like, oh, dude, that's probably the dudes from Focus Target because it's such a popular podcast and all. But I don't have that. So I'm trying to kind of rebrand myself.
Did you really have that thought process?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I like it.
Listen,
that is optimistic.
if there's one, you never know. It's a small
thoughtful.
world. You never know. Like, there's not many people. But I don't know. I felt like I
I like
wanted
where you go with it. I'm not trying to poo-poo it. I like it.
It's a little bit ostentatious. I understand that, but especially because you're a real captain, so it's probably most insulting to you. You're like, where are your credentials? How much time did you spend in flight school? Like, what have you ever piloted? Right? You're captain of what
You
exactly?
can still be a first officer. So even
Oh.
as a pilot, pilots have first officers also.
Well, there you go.
I could also be a flight crew engineer if you prefer that instead.
I like that.
All right. Well, sorry to derail us there, but yeah, I think it's probably good to get that out of the way. That way, people aren't surprised. But today we are going to talk about the feature film, The Interview, with Seth Rogen and James Franco.
Wait, are you honey dicking?
I'm not honey dicking you, bro. We're really going to talk about it. We're probably just going to quote the movie randomly for about an hour, so this may be a less informative and more silly podcast, but we'll see. We'll try to get some hard hitting content in here if we can. But before we do, we're going to do our question of the day because that's what we like to do here on the Focus Target podcast. And today's question of the day is last time we kind of did a podcast potpourri. We talked a little bit about games, and we had a question of the day that was about if you could re-experience a game. And so, kind of looking at that from the other way, there's a lot of upcoming games on the horizon. And so, my question is there a game coming up or coming down the pike, maybe even hypothetically coming down the pike, that you are afraid won't live up to we have it written as won't live up to the hype, but I would say more won't live up to your hopes for it, perhaps.
Expectations, if you
Yeah,
will.
regardless of whether it's a hyped game or not, like what you're hoping for, that you're worried, a game you're really looking forward to, but you're like, gosh, I hope they don't mess it up. I'm gonna start with Fan.
I'm glad you clarified that because that was my thought process behind it. Because I
Okay.
was like, this title I'm going to mention, it's not necessarily hyped. We've kind of hyped it a little bit. I have high expectations for it, but blah, blah, blah.
Where
So
did you
while all
go
of you
with
want
this?
me to say Half-Life 3, I'm not going to
Oh,
because that will live up to expectations. So therefore, it does not fall into this category.
okay.
And Shy
You're
looks
not
a little.
you're not afraid of it not living up. You're
I'm
sure
absolutely not afraid if
if it
it
comes
ever
out.
were to come to fruition of not living up. And the reason being is that the Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 were both like groundbreaking. Like Valve does not just release stuff to take a cheap shot to get a money grab. Like they will absolutely only release something if they felt that it is of
If they
quality.
did, it already be out, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, if that's all they cared about. So I have all, and I want to hear what Shai has to say about this, about me not selecting this, which is hilarious. It's my non-answer that he's going to comment on. I will not say Half-Life 3. Go ahead, Shai.
Matrix.
What do you say? Jinx?
That come through the Matrix. Yeah, I mean, two movies that were considered revolutionary. But I guess that's a fourth movie, I guess technically. But
okay, well we haven't gotten there yet, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to discuss that one in further detail.
But the game I will say is Pantheon: Rise of the Fallen. So for those of you who don't
Ooh,
know, Pantheon is a game
nice.
that
Good.
I have been very excited about, that we've mentioned on the podcast a couple times. It's a throwback to the MMOs of yore when there were holy trinities. What?
Allegedly, right?
Yeah, yeah, right. Allegedly, the throwback to the Holy Trinity, the healer tank, DPS, where classification matters on jobs and all those things. Where the game's not going to be EVZ, where you're not able to solo all the content, where you do rely on your, um, your what's the word I'm looking for? How
Party members.
people how people rely on you and what you are to the community and stuff like that. Your reputation,
Oh,
where
you're
you do rely on reputation and you do need to lean on people to accomplish things that are big that aren't just given to you. So it's not supposed to be an easy game, and all those things sound probably terrible to a lot of listeners, but it sounds like music to my ears when I think about what MMOs I've loved in the past and what games I've loved in the past. They've all been really challenging. They've all relied on you being a or needing to lean on other individuals in order to accomplish grand things, and that's what this MMO is supposed to be a throwback to, instead of just the quick cash grab, um, quest from level 1 to 50, no grind, all that fun stuff. So I'm afraid. The reason I'm afraid is not because of anything I've read or anything like that. It's just that no MMO since the Great One, 11, has ever lived up to any type of expectations that I've had for them. They've had their short moments, they've had their nice appeals, but the honeymoon was ended pretty abruptly on all of them, and it's just a game that I don't look back the same way that I do the other one. So I'm hoping that Pantheon won't let us down.
Don't worry, sir. I won't let you down.
No worries, sir.
No, that's a great pick. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's a fantastic one. For as long as you've been had your eye on that and kind of,
Yeah.
got I think you got us a little bit excited. I guess shouldn't speak for Shy, but like, when you showed it to me, I was like, oh yeah, this seemed like it has some legs. Like this could be great. And, so yeah, I will. Well, I guess time will tell on that one. What about you, Shy? What's the title on your horizon that you feel that way about?
Well, when I saw this, I was thinking Lost Ark because that's a game I've been looking forward to for like 6 years now. Like I was tracking that before it released in Korea, but like it's out now, so I don't know if that's. I mean, I guess maybe it would count technically. I don't know, but
I think you can
um,
still do it because correct me if I'm wrong, you're not quite end game yet in Lost Ark, or did you get there
well,
last?
and you're right.
I don't know.
It technically hasn't released. I guess tomorrow's really the release date. But that being
You have
aside,
you haven't experienced all of it yet either. So like
yeah,
there's still it
yeah.
still has an opportunity to either wow you or let you down.
Yeah, but I want to go more in the vein of Van, who kind of
Okay.
chose not to pick a popular game and pick a more like unassuming game. I want to do the same thing because one that came to mind because I struggle because I'm not really looking forward to any games that have been announced, but I realized if they announced it, I'd probably be more excited for Battle Chasers 2 than I've been excited for almost any game that's come out in a long time. And that's also a game that they could really mess up or that I could really not like depending on my expectations for the game. Like I think of like the first Darksiders and how much I liked Darksiders 1, and then when I played Darksiders 2, I was like, this does not feel the same. And like haven't barely played more than like 6 hours of that over the past like a decade. I don't know. So yeah, Battle Chasers 2 would be my answer because I think that could be really good. And I mean, I've spoken on this podcast how much I love the first game, but
Oh, yeah, no, that's a good one too. I didn't expect that. Do you want to touch on Lost Ark a little bit?
what
Hope
like
just like hopes, fears, thoughts, like super brief initial thoughts.
yeah, I
Has
don't.
it maybe just has it lived up in the time you've spent with it so far?
I think it's hard to
And
like say that. I think the thing right now is that I don't feel like I'm rushing it and it feels good. This is probably the first MO in a while that I haven't like just felt like I'm gonna like try to get to end game as fast as possible. And I've been like trying some different classes out and just like I don't know. I've been enjoying playing it versus like trying to race to get to some content that then it's like then what? I mean, yeah.
yeah.
So that's been
Well,
cool.
especially too, like if the content does rely on, like generally in MMOs, it's more fun to do end game content with your crew rather than random pickups. So, like, I remember this happened to you guys in 14, where like you and Rido and I think Chev like rushed to max level, and like Van and Z and Sheeny and I kind of were taking a little bit slower. And you guys got up there, and then you didn't like have anybody to do anything with, and like you had to do a lot of pickup groups.
Yeah.
And like I think if I remember correctly, that's how you guys met Tenkin in the first place.
Well, it was tanking, yeah. And then, well, and
Yeah.
honestly, the game I think of is Terra, because
Oh yeah.
Rod and I rushed Terra hardcore. Like we just played that thing like nonstop for like a week. Got to max level, played with a bunch of dicks in endgame dungeons, and Rido quit. Cause like we had no one to play with that we liked playing with, and we would play with people who were like just like caught like toxic, and it was like he's like I'm not putting up with this crap, and like he just quit the game. And then you guys all got to max level. We had a lot of fun for a number of months, but he'd already quit and like was done, and like I don't know. So
Yeah, I remember that. Because I joined a little bit after you guys. I kind of resisted it at first, and I joined, and like Rido and FC both quit like days after I even started playing. And I was like, oh, that kind of sucks.
yeah,
But you're right. The rest of us who stuck with it for a while actually did have some fun. Made some great memories. Nebuchadnezzar came
never
out of that.
Kenner.
All right, well, so mine actually changed with so I was gonna say Persona 6. A lot of people are thinking that sometime this year they may announce a Persona 6. I don't know if that's I mean, it's all just rumors, but I was gonna say that because I think I loved Persona 3 so much, and Persona 5, which I didn't love as much as 3, it was still just such a high quality game. I've been thinking about as I'm playing through it currently, just like how they're gonna like top it. Like I just wonder. It feels like they've done like everything they can do, and so I feel like they really have to reinvent the game, and so I just wonder if it'll live up. But something came out in the Nintendo Direct. Actually, did you either of you guys watch the Nintendo Direct yesterday?
Not the
There's like
most recent one, no.
it. There's like 8 games that they announced, and I was like, oh, oh, and like a bunch that I didn't even like I'd heard of, and I wasn't that interested. And then when I saw some footage, I was like, oh damn, that actually looks pretty good. So I was freaking Switch, man, great system. But they announced a sequel to Super Mario Strikers. If anybody's played that game, it's the original was for the GameCube. It was like the Super Mario soccer game, and then there was another one on Wii, I think, like Super Mario Strikers, like Charged or something. But there was something about the first one that really hooked me in. Something about the gameplay, like it was really fun, but it was also really like just like kind of almost like how like in like Mario Kart, you feel like the computer kind of cheats to keep it close no matter what you do. And like it had an element of that to it where it was like it was frustrating where like it didn't matter sometimes how good you got. It always felt like the computer just got what they needed when they needed it. But, like, I played the shit out of that game, and I played a ton with a friend of the podcast, Lemon Cloak. Like, we used to play that in college all the time live, and, so they released they're making a sequel. It's coming out in, like, June, and it's gonna have, like, online play and online club play and all this stuff, and, like, I'm I'm really excited about it all of a sudden, and I'm like, but I wonder if it can recapture that magic, of a game that of a very specific game that I liked a long time ago. Like I just don't know how it's going to live up to its predecessor. So more to come on that in a couple months, I'm sure. But
So, I don't know if this was on the Nintendo Direct, but I did see the announcement for Nintendo Switch for No Man's Sky.
yeah, yeah, that was on the Nintendo Direct. I thought
And
that
I
was
know
interesting.
that was one of the games that you were talking about if you could replay
Hmm.
with
Right.
all of its things. And I feel like that game would lend itself well to a Switch. I don't know,
Cool.
man. You might get your
Cool.
opportunity.
I don't know. Yeah, yeah. I was trying to decide like what would I rather play No Man's Sky on, like Switch or PS5, where like
Mm.
you really could get the most out of the graphical
Yeah, because you
side
got
of it.
just this giant screen. You can really feel like you're in space as opposed to looking at a
Hmm.
small. Well, you could do the same with the Switch though,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you could dock that bad boy and
But generally, the Switch hard drive or like specs don't let you get it doesn't quite run as nice.
yeah. Because
Generally,
I wonder
nowadays.
if it'll be 4K on the PS5, whereas the Switch max output is 1080p.
Hmm.
Yes, I that's kind of where I'm leaning. But yeah, no, there's a lot. If you haven't seen Nintendo Direct, maybe even if you just check out the highlights, they announced a lot of games. And a lot of them I was pretty excited about, and I was like, man, when do I have time to play any of these games? I don't have time to play any of these games. They announced all this stuff. I'm just like, I don't know what I'm gonna do about it. Doesn't really help me, but it was cool. It's cool when like every game that I'm just like, oh. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Shy?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Have they announced a Switch Pro yet? Like that's been rumored for what, almost a year now, right? Wasn't a year like
Been
almost a year
rumored
ago
for
we
like
saw
2 years.
well we like saw
Yeah.
those mock-ups, right? And we thought they were going to announce it like in a month or something at the time,
Yeah.
and probably because of the
Super
shortages
Nintendo.
for silicone like chips
Yeah,
or
that's a good
something,
point.
like they just can't make
And
them
they
probably.
just released the OLED, right? Well,
They
I
did
say
release
just. It's been out for
Hmm.
quite a few months, but that is the
it'll
most recent iteration.
it'll be
Gotcha.
really interesting to see if the Steam Deck, when it comes out, puts pressure on them
That's a good point.
to upgrade.
Yeah,
Because
that's a good point.
I've seen people say that already the Steam Deck is more powerful, it's got a bigger screen, like, it's kinda superior in a lot of ways, I guess, and so I wonder if that might light a fire under them. But we could talk, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
So, that was our question of the day. If you, if our listeners, if there's a game coming out that fear won't live up to the hype, let us know. We'd love to hear about it. Our contact information will be provided at the end of the podcast. Okay, interview. I got questions for you goats. All right, let's do this. Um, let's start with the disclaimer, I guess. Like, this is an interesting movie, right? Like, especially, we'll talk a little bit about like how it's aged, but even when it came out in what I would consider to be a little bit less sensitive of a time than we live in today, it was one of those movies where you're just like, whoa, like, am I going to hell just for watching this? Answer's probably yes, right? Like it's kind of a messed up movie in some ways, in a lot of ways, I would say. So just overall thoughts. You know what do you think? Tell the world what you think of the interview. I'm going to start with Van again. Host can do that kind of thing.
So it's funny that I this movie is for some reason near and dear to my heart. I absolutely love it. Like it just makes me feel good. It's a movie that if I have a couple hours and I just want to relax and enjoy life in general, like I will throw that bad boy on. Like I don't want anything serious. I'm just doing this. And what's funny is I never looked at the reviews because I know it was marred in controversy anyway when it came out, and we're going to get to that. But I never looked in the reviews until preparing for this podcast. And I did not realize how poorly it was rated. And then we can go into the reasons as to why. But I mean, like top critics, like official Hollywood critics and whatnot, give it like a 49%, which is terrible for movies. And then I'm like, okay, well, screw the critics. They all have an agenda. Let's go what the audience says. And the audience rating isn't much better. It's 51%. And I'm like, wow, I did not like I knew this movie had controversies for other reasons, and I'm sure I'm skipping ahead and I don't mean to. It's just where my thought process is going. But I was just surprised at how it's crazy because this came out in 2014. We're talking 7 years ago, and it was absolutely polarized right down the middle. You either thought it was what I think it is, just on its surface, a slapstick, stupid movie that has crass humor that was done actually pretty ingeniously in some parts with great dialogue and is a stupid movie, or you think it's what I think the other side of the coin might be is that you went too far, you hit things that shouldn't have been touched on, you made some stupid decisions, and therefore I hate this movie. So I kind of feel like it's very polarized, and it's pretty interesting. So I don't think that it's a majority of people think it's just a dumb movie. I think either you really did enjoy it a lot and feel like I do, or you thought it was absolutely stupid and doesn't deserve to be viewed by anybody.
What about you, Shy? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy it. I do feel bad sometimes for enjoying it, and there's parts of it I enjoy less than others. And it's funny because, like, even watching it this time, because I watched it again in preparation for this podcast, it's like I try to watch. I'm like, could I ever like share this with certain people in my life, like family members or whatever? And like something happens, I'm like, nope, they just said that, like, or whatever. Like, and then like, then by the end of the movie, I'm like, well, 100 times that happened, so no, of course I couldn't like even recommend it to someone that I respect their opinion of me. But no, I don't. It's funny, like, and you bring up a good point, Van. Like, and we'll probably get into controversies, but like, it's funny. Like, I think of terms like the people who probably think very poorly of it, like they would use, like racist, sexist, homophobic,
Sure.
like different like terms people would probably say about the movie based on like dialogue. But like, you think of like even like a filmmaker like Mel Brooks, where like even
Oh
like the
God.
films he made, like you think in like a couple decades, like will those even be like allowed like in like public like domain? Like you may not be able to buy those digitally because of like how offensive they are considered. You know, whereas like this guy, like he was just trying to like, you know, I don't know, like, because I don't, you know, I don't think that Seth Rogen and James Franco went into this movie thinking, well, we are going to like really try to hurt people, right?
Right.
Like we're gonna make a dumb film where we make a lot of jokes that kind of make fun of almost everybody, and hopefully people can have a sense of humor about themselves. And what we're finding nowadays about our culture and society is that no, none of it, like, people just can't have a sense of humor about themselves. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a great point. I want to go back to what you said about a reticency to share this with people whose opinion you value, because so when I rewatched it in preparation for the podcast, I watched it with my wife who had never seen it before, and I was a little nervous as well. Not because I didn't, think she could handle it, but because it is. It's like there's parts where you're just like, is she gonna think less of me for watching this movie? Now, luckily, she really loves Seth Rogen and James Franco, and so I think they helped her get through it. Because at the end, she said it was funny even though it was really dumb.
I thought you were gonna say, luckily, she already doesn't think highly of you at all. So like, there's not much lower you can
You know,
go.
most people feel that way about me for some reason.
Right.
My wife actually has a high opinion of me, and I
Hmm.
really
Huh.
value that.
That is odd. We should
And
get her on the podcast one day and maybe do a podcast on
yeah,
that.
well, you probably don't believe me, and understandably so. But but yeah, it's
I just
true.
think she's a sweetheart, and you're
She
like the
really,
thing that she needs
you
to
know,
fix and take care of.
maybe
oh,
So
that's
that's
there you
what
why
it
go,
is.
she's with
there you
you.
go.
Right.
Maybe
It's a
that's
pity. It's a pity relationship. She's
yeah,
Yeah.
taking pity
Exactly.
upon you.
Yeah.
would make sense. But yeah, but we watched it together. We enjoyed it. It was fun laughing with her on some of those parts, and
Nice.
like it is so over the top. And I was wondering. I feel like I need to watch it like again on like Shy's PlayStation account, which I have access to. Am I allowed to say that on the podcast? Um, because we watched it on Netflix,
Hmm.
and I just felt like there was nothing I could think of that was missing, but it felt short. And there were like a
Hmm.
couple places where I thought I remembered the scene going on a little bit longer,
Hmm.
like especially like the part like when the CIA agent comes to their apartment after they've been partying all night and kind of recruits them. Like I feel like that ended really fast, and I'm like, am I just not remembering it, or am I used to having watched like an unrated version, and
Ah,
now I'm getting like a theatrical release
I
perhaps?
wonder.
So I feel like I might have missed out on something that like I couldn't tell you exactly what wasn't there, but I also haven't seen it since probably like the last time you guys came out to Colorado, which was a number of years ago now. So,
You know what, Shirel? Shirel's all about those unrated versions, so yeah, probably.
mm,
I did want to. Now that you brought it up, this is a good
yeah,
segue into
yeah,
that. Did we watch this for the first time together, or did we watch it separately and it
That's a
just
good
happened to be
question.
near when we were going to Colorado? Because I do remember it being a highlight of us being in Colorado together.
the first time I saw it for sure was with you guys. That's the only reason I watched it. I I wouldn't have sought this one out on my own.
Yeah, what I think
I
we
don't know if you guys had seen it previously or if any of you had seen it
And
previously.
I think,
Can't
see, I
remember.
have a memory of us watching it together for the first time ever. And I'm wondering if that's another reason we talk about this a million times. Like, yes, the content means something, but where you are in your life at that
Mm,
moment also adds to whether you enjoy something or not. And like watching this movie with you people, and I mean you people as in Shy and Rido and you, Smiley, and everybody, like this
Yes.
is our humor with one another, as crass and terrible and stupid as it is.
Yeah.
And then to watch this movie together, like we would have just been in like stupidity heaven. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering
That's
if
what it was.
that's why like we have that great feeling with it. So then when we watch it, it kind of reminds us of like just the paloozas we do and all that stuff. And that's why it's
Yeah,
so enjoyable
that's a great
also.
point. Like, I wonder too if we enjoyed it more the first time, and then it stuck with us a little bit more the first time because we were together. Like, if we had
Right.
watched it on our own, or like to Shai's point, if like you had caught it with like a family member, not really necessarily knowing what it was, like,
Turned it off 20
would
minutes
you have a
in.
different feeling about it? Would you not have gotten us into it? If you didn't have Van and Rido quoting it every 10 seconds for
Oh
the rest
yeah.
of the trip, like,
I kind of feel like Shy probably is
I do
pretty in there as far as the quote master too, not just
for sure.
not just us.
I was just saying from like that first weekend, I feel
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
guys really.
So
you know,
112 minutes. What is that? That's an hour and 52, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to do some quick research here to see
see.
if that's true or not.
There's different length
And then I'll check
versions.
out how long it is on Netflix as well.
All right. Well, while you're doing that, what about we'll snake it back about what are some of the things you liked? I'll start with myself, and this probably isn't gonna surprise anybody, but I do love the over the top number of Lord of the Rings references
Mm-hmm.
in this film. You know that that's great, and I mean I love that I know that James Franco in real life is a huge Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
fan. It's like it's cool to me that like it's not just because he like I know why it's in there. It's because he loves Lord of the Rings and he wants to put it in, and that makes me feel like the movie's a little bit more of a labor of love, or at least that portion of it. Um, I think that's great. So
Because it wouldn't make sense to be in there if it, you know what I mean? Because it's
yeah,
not like it has no
yeah,
relation to the content or like that type of movie,
that's
right? So
true.
like
Yeah,
it has to be because he loves it.
it's
Yeah,
really in there because he likes it, and
yeah,
that's, that's what I would do if I was making movies. I'd put in all kinds of references to stuff I cared about. Like, why
yeah.
not? So, I also I liked the little foreshadowing that they did, like how like and that they didn't ever actually address it. Like I love when they do something where if I'm sure you remember um, Dave Skylark when they're pitching the mission to him. He's like going off on this tangent like how he's gonna do it, and they're like, "You're an idiot. It's not gonna work." He's like, "I'm gonna wear a bulletproof vest, and we're gonna go through a secret tunnel to the ocean, and SEAL Team Six gonna be ready to take us home." And they're like, "You're that none of that's possible. Like, what are you even talking about?" Blah blah blah.
Yeah, what's
And
gonna
then
kill you first? The freezing cold, tigers. There's tigers out there. Like, yeah.
And then, like, when you watch the movie, that's literally exactly what
Yep.
happens. He's saved by
Yep.
the bulletproof vest. They go through a secret tunnel. SEAL Team Six waiting for him, but they don't call it out, right? They don't ever say, "Hey, didn't you say
Yeah.
what's gonna Like they leave it for the viewer to remember or to catch it on a rewatch. And
Yeah.
I I like that, like just that little bit of subtlety. I love when they do that in films and they don't like beat you over the head with it, but they do put it in there.
The
So
tell
that
all.
the
Yeah,
tell
the tell all at the end
yeah,
too. Yeah, you're
yeah,
right. That was during that same time. Yeah.
and, like, a
There will
lot
be
of
no
that I
tell
didn't
all.
catch in the past.
No.
Go ahead, quote it, quote it.
That was it. Yeah, there'll be no
Oh,
tell all. Yeah.
there's tell. Alright,
There'd be no tell all. The titillating agent. Yeah,
alright, Shai, what about you? Things you liked?
I mean, honestly, that's a great call out. The four, because that is this like, and Van even mentioned it in his when he was talking about the movie. What things like what overall thoughts or what he liked is it's well written. Like
Yeah,
sometimes like movies like Zoolander are fun because they are just dumb. Like they are just idiotic, dumb fun, and it's awesome. Like it's just something you can sit and just like laugh at, and you don't have to think about. You can have on a second screen, whatever. But like the interview has some stuff in it where it's like they put thought into it, and like they really planned it out well. And I think like I don't know, like even there's just little stuff like where even like the bodyguards, the one bot, they're suspicious about them, and then like and they build this like tension, right? Because they're like you can tell the bodyguards are suspicious, and then like the one guy's gonna die, and you're like, well now the other guy knows. So, like when one guy dies, the other guy's gonna like come after him. Like that's definitely what like when I was watching the movie the first time, I'm thinking that, and then like they find a way to like kill both bodyguards at the same time, and it's like, oh wow, they like that worked. Like they kind of resolved that tension in like one scene. I think the casting is ingenious. I think Seth Rogen and James Franco, this isn't the first film they've done it together, and you can tell they're friends. Like, and I think that comes across. These are two guys that just like hanging out, like writing, acting, whatever together, and like they're just like you said about your wife, liking them. Like I've talked to so many people who like this film because it's got like James Franco, Seth Rogen, or both. Like
yeah.
they're just, I think they're likable guys,
Well,
and
and
they're fun to
the
watch.
guy who
Just kind of
played
like,
him too. What an awesome job!
yeah,
What
Oh,
an
that guy
yeah,
awesome
yeah.
job!
dude.
He was
He
so
inspired
good.
me to watch his other series that he started. He started
Oh,
a series shortly after that called Fresh Off the Boat, and it was a
oh,
TV
okay.
series where he
Yeah,
played the main protagonist in that movie. And I was like, I never had heard of him before the interview, and then once I saw his performance in here, I was like, oh my god,
yeah.
this guy's hilarious. Like,
So good. He's so
yeah,
good. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a great call out. Great casting for sure. Go ahead, Van.
yeah, and talking about being real friends like that actually leads to one of the things I liked about it.
Mhm.
Number one, we could talk about how quotable it is. We quote it all the time, but secondarily, like the fact that they are friends, and when you watch it again and you pay attention to the characters on screen, like really pay attention to them, not just like what they're saying or what you're supposed to watch as an audience member, but actually looking at their lips and all that stuff. And they're like breaking the fourth wall like so many times. Like there's times where you can tell they're fighting back like laughs on this like improv, line of thought that somebody just obviously went on. Because when you watch these movies, a lot of times they'll do like bloopers at the end, or they'll do the making ofs and all that, and you can see like how much of it actually wasn't scripted but was improv on the moment. These guys are just comedic geniuses, right? So like they'll just go on an improv and they leave the cameras rolling, and you could tell like when it's happening versus when it's not sometimes, and just them breaking character and like trying to hold in a laugh at a very serious moment when James Franco's just being an absolute idiot, but he's being serious about being an idiot, and like Seth's just like doing his best not to break character, and it's so funny. I get a crack up on even the things that they don't say, just the subtleties.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, that's like I think Shai mentioned, like so much of the things we like is the chemistry, right? Like that's one of the things I love about Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which is my favorite show. Is like it's not even as much about what they do in the show; it's that the characters just have such an amazing chemistry. Like I really don't care what they're doing; I just want to watch them do it, and that's why like they've got a podcast now, and I've been listening to that because like just them on a podcast, even just talking about stupid shit. It's like it's just interesting. Like chemistry can take you so far, and that's why I think we have a great podcast. I think we got pretty good chemistry between us. So let's snake it back again, Van. I'm gonna go back to you. Things you didn't like. Were there any? Anything that you want to call out that
Yeah,
you
so
felt like, yeah.
no, but I just want to point out, well, yes, but I just want to point out Randall Park is the
Oh,
guy who played Kim Jong. We've mentioned
yes,
James Franco and Seth Rogen, and I think
yes.
he absolutely deserved to have his name.
Well said. Yeah.
Um, things I didn't like. I honestly am probably not the person to go to for this, because I really don't think of. I don't know. I just don't know if there's things I didn't like, to be honest.
That's fair.
If there's something I didn't like, I just thought of it's not impactful to me. So
Okay.
nope,
Fair
can't
enough.
think of anything.
What about you, Shy?
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind as much as I love the film, and one every time I watch it comes to mind, and it's the over the top gore. Like, it's I don't like that, and it makes me
Yeah.
squeamish. And it's not that I can't watch films that are violent. Like, there's times where I can watch The Witcher. Or, like, there's shows I can watch that I know are gonna be violent. But in this movie, I don't like it, and I wish it wasn't in it. And like every time, specifically the end in the control room where he's getting his like their fingers
He's-
cut up, bit
fingers-
off,
Yeah,
like,
dude,
and it's like, and it's over the top and whatever. I get that, but like it's still, it just makes me squeamish, and it's hard for me to watch that scene, as funny as it is. Like,
that's that is funny, because that's one of my favorite scenes in the interview. Is not the fingers. I get it. That is a little over the top, and then the control stick up the guy's butt and all that stuff. But like the one of my favorite parts is when he's with Sukhyun Park, and they're like, all right, let's get out of here. And they reach over the duffel bag, and then they just like lay waste to everybody in the hallway. Because I'm like, how the hell are you gonna get out there? There's like 7 people from freaking Kim's, protective group, and nope, they just laid everybody down. That's one of my favorite parts of the whole movie.
Well, I don't mind violence. I guess that's what I mean. Like, I don't mind any of the shooting or even the tank and the helicopter. It's just those specific, the finger bitings, and in like the scene with the bodyguards where like there's blood all over the place. Just like it just feels. I know it's over the top. That bothers me. The other thing too is there's just a couple scenes where Dave Skylark is like acting super dumb. I don't know. Like, I know he's supposed to be like a dumb character. I feel like just a couple times where it's like, you're not that dumb.
Can you think of the scenes specifically?
Yeah, there was a scene specifically. There's a scene where he's like playing basketball with Kim Jong Un.
Yeah.
And there's like a word, like there's either a word someone says and he like acts like he doesn't even know what the word means, or like what was it? Because it stuck out really bit like big. Here, I don't know. Maybe Smiley. Maybe you talk a little bit. I'll see if I can think of the exact line, because there was a line that was like, yeah.
Was it they despise us because they are not us?
I have a note about that to mention that, because that was one of my favorite quotes watching this film this time. No, that was not it.
It's like they despise us.
That's so good. So good.
He just drops the ball.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was
Hate us 'cause
Stalin.
they ain't us.
It was the Stalin joke. He's like, it was given to my father by Stalin. He's like, where I'm from, he's called Stallone. I'm like, you are not that dumb. Like obviously you went through like I'm sure you went through college. Like you've heard the name Stalin and you know what he's talking about. Like that of any joke in that movie that felt the most forced to me, and it just stood out this time. I don't know. Like I don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. So mine's a little well. So the thing I probably would, in seriousness, the thing that I didn't like, I think, a little bit is just like, listen, I give him a lot of credit. It's ballsy to do a movie about an active world leader, and obviously we're getting into this probably next. But like, I do feel I did, especially I remember the first time watching it, I felt a little squeamish. It's like you're making fun of like a real country and real people, and like this isn't like people from the past. Like they're out there literally right now. Like, and a lot of the problems, and it is obviously, despite it being heavily satired and whatnot, it's still talking about real social problems. Like they're not making up these, the conditions in North Korea in a lot of cases. And so like it's probably a lot less funny. It feels a little bad to be laughing. Probably not as funny for the people who are maybe living there right now, like or at the time. So like that I always felt a little bit not bad about it. And like I say, I give them credit for having the balls to do it. But I always felt like, man, like I feel kind of bad about watching this. Like I feel like, as we talked about earlier, like I feel definitely a bit of a guilty pleasure movie.
So
More so than most. Yeah, go ahead.
that's funny. I was this time when I watched it, I had the a similar thought the first time, and it was, could they have made this movie and just not said North Korea, not said dictator, not use Kim Jong Un's actual name,
Right.
and
Like made a fake one.
would it have still been funny? Right? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And everybody could have inferred that it was somewhat North Korea, but
Right.
or an impoverished country with a dictator. It didn't have to be specifically that. And would it have still carried the same effect? Would it have still been as impactful, humorous, and all those things? And I don't have that answer, but I had thought the same thing too. And you're right though. Like when you think about it, like there's that hilarious scene when the sex scene when they first Sukyun Park and all that stuff, and should they like stop in the middle of things getting hot and heavy, and she's like, "Oh my, I lied about the output on our potato crops," and
Yeah.
it's like that clearly goes back to just the propaganda that's happening in there, the true famine that's happening with the people who live in there right now,
Right.
and the things that how the officials in those countries do stretch the truth and all that stuff to seem like they're more prosperous than they really are. Um, yeah, thanks for ruining the podcast.
Well,
But yeah, no, I agree with you though. That is a very interesting
it'd be interesting to
conundrum.
see. It's hard. I was trying to find a good parallel, and I couldn't in the moment when Sarah and I were talking about it, but I think I might have come up with one. Like, how would we feel if somebody made a movie about that with America and used like George W. Bush, right? Like, I think people like Barack Obama and Donald Trump, for one, they're too polarizing, and for two, they don't fit quite the same mold. But I think George W. Bush is at least somewhat analogous. Somebody who maybe wasn't popular with everybody, but was popular with some people and was kind of regarded in certain ways. Like, what if they somebody made a movie like completely, you know, not just like making fun of him, but then like in the end, like literally like killing like a world leader while he was the president, like not in the past, but like during his active presidency. Like I feel like if that had happened in America, I think people would have been pretty pissed off. Like it certainly is a bit taboo.
I mean, do you want to dive into controversies? Because
Let me get to the next thing I didn't like, and then we'll jump right into that. I should have probably started with this because there's one huge plot hole in this movie that I think nobody ever talks about. We need to address it. Okay, so let's lay the groundwork here. We're supposed
McConaughey is far too short to actually
no,
do
no,
that.
I'm not. I'm not
Oh,
going.
that's
I'm
not the
not going.
plot hole. Okay.
I'm not going with The McConaughey. You get down on your knees. You can find a way. Love finds a way. So don't worry about that. Here's the problem. We're told that these two guys, that Aaron and Dave Skylark, are best friends. They've been friends for 20 years. They've cut all this stuff they've gone through together. They hang out on the weekends, they party together. They're they're basically brothers, right? And now you're going to tell me, all right, that Dave Skylark, who is clearly obsessed with Lord of the Rings, like he's making Lord of the Rings references left and right. You're gonna tell me that Aaron has never seen Lord of the Rings in all the time they've been together? You're gonna tell me that Aaron doesn't know who Boromir is? Let me quote this. That's a Boromir thing to say. What he says, I don't know who that is. How do you not know who that is? Like, either you're not really that close of friends, because let me tell you, if my best friend hadn't seen Lord of the Rings and I felt that way about it, like I would be a terrible friend for not at least getting him the basics, right? You gotta know who Boromir is. Come on. Like, or, you know, something's going on there. Something's going on there. Explain, make this make sense to me. How does he not know who Boromir is if he's been with, like, even if, like,
I
even
can
let's say
explain
he
it to you.
didn't see the movie. If he didn't see the movie, he has to have heard him talking about Boromir for 20 fucking years. You can't pick this shit up. Like, come on.
I have a couple theories,
Let's
but
go.
I've been
Let's
talking a
hear it.
lot. So Shy, if
No,
you got anything you wanna mention,
No,
please jump on in here.
I can jump in after you. Yeah.
No, let's
Give your-
go. I'll piggyback off you on this one.
Yeah, well, I wanted to touch base on your guys' last thought about making fun of Korea as well. But I think the Boromir thing, I don't know. I mean, I may not be the most qualified to speak, but I mean, I'm not the most qualified to speak. But how many of your guys' wives, like, there's things that are near and dear to your heart that you maybe make references occasionally to, that, like, if you gave them a pop quiz right now about it, like, they would have no idea, like, who Paladin Cecil is, or Celeste, or, like,
right.
um,
Significant others are a
Arma
little bit of
3.
a different. Significant others are a little bit of a different story,
All
because
right.
you're like, I think when you've got a best friend, generally best friendships tend to be predicated on common interests,
But maybe
right?
not all the same common interests.
Maybe
I
not
mean,
all the
I
same,
guess
Not
but
I'm
like,
saying
everything.
all I'm saying is,
like
like, a significant other, I think, is the same way, and that's someone you've spent maybe a lot of time over a long period of time with. So I guess I don't know. I don't buy your plot hole. I thought you were gonna say more the fact that Kim Jong Un could, like, drive a wedge between them so quickly over, like, the course of 24 hours if they've been such best friends for, like, decades, where he would even say that quote, not the fact that he wouldn't know who Boromir was. I thought you were gonna go, like,
He's a
a level
master
higher than
manipulator,
that.
bro.
But no,
I,
I don't. I think Boromir also, like, we've gotten used to saying that's such a Boromir thing to say. None of us ever used to, like, refer to Boromir, like, in quotations before, like, as
right,
if,
but
like, and so,
you
like,
knew who he
may
was,
so he
though.
may
Like,
so James Franco may have just never said that to him before. Like, he maybe never used Boromir as a reference until, like, that moment, and, like,
Here's what I
don't
think
know.
happened, Smiley. I think, and hopefully this will help you sleep better at night. What I think happened was, I think, like you said, they've been friends forever. Lord of the Rings has been out for 20 years. He watched it 20 years ago because Skylark was his best friend. So he watched it, didn't like it, doesn't remember everybody's name because he only watched it once for his friend and then never went back to the movie again.
okay, I can accept that, because Boromir, it's not like Frodo Baggins or Gandalf or something.
Right.
Like,
Or
he
yeah,
is kind of a
exactly.
secondary character, and so I can see that if you maybe he did show it to him, and he
Here's
just
an
was like, oh yeah, it's great. Like, let's go,
right.
yeah, do some shots now and not talk about it anymore.
Right, right.
I can see that. I was gonna play devil's advocate to my own argument and see if you guys thought, like, does he actually know who Boromir is, and he just said that to piss him off, right?
Mm,
Like in the moment, like, what can I say that's gonna, incite him, is pretend to not know what he's talking about when he's talking about Lord of the Rings. But
that's some 3D chess stuff right there.
yeah,
Yeah.
so probably not what we're talking about. But all
And
right,
this
sorry.
this movie's all about provocative, think.
Right. Okay, so enough of that. Let's segue back to Shy, let him get his thoughts out, and we'll roll into the controversies, because I think that's an important thing to talk about. So Shy, take it away.
Well, I mean, maybe this shows how bad of a person I am, I guess. But, like, I have never watched it once feeling bad about the subject matter of, like, the
All right.
situation in North Korea. Like, because I guess I've never thought of them making fun of the people of North Korea. It's only making fun of Kim Jong Un, and not even, like, I feel like you mentioned the point with the lady, officer, this Suk Young Park. She even she regrets it. Like, you see her as a
Yeah.
human who's been, like, kind of, like, beholden into the system, like, where she's been coerced or whatever, felt trapped. And we know that, like, totalitarian government, like, systems around the world, like Nazis, like there were a lot of people in the Nazi party who weren't, like, who were, like, coerced into, like, following a certain, like, lifestyle, basically, because if they didn't, they would be killed or whatever. And I think that just felt real. But yeah, I've never, like, I guess, I don't know, like, I feel like they did a good job, honestly, of showing all these negative things throughout the movie and like highlighting like the manipulation, and even like the whole idea at the end is like we need to show the people what
Yeah.
what Kim Jong-un's about. And so almost like whether or not anyone from North Korea would ever watch the film and be like, oh man, I wonder if that's true, like probably not, but like and it's all perspective. That's how we view it's our almost American propaganda of North Korea. I mean, whatever, probably not, it's
Maybe.
factual, but
Maybe. All right, well, let's talk about some of the controversies, right? Like, so obviously, probably not. I mean, obviously, from what Van said, I didn't know that either, but not maybe the best well received film here in the United States. Probably not really well received in North Korea either, I imagine, assuming it was even available to be seen. I feel like that's somewhat unlikely. Um, but and I'm not as familiar with some of these, so I might actually defer to whichever you guys put this in here.
Yeah.
Was it you,
So
Van? Yeah, take it away.
yeah, so in doing some of the research, also wanted to make sure that we went back and talked about some of the controversy because it is very unique to this film. And there was a lot of anger out of North Korea and North Korean officials
I imagine
to where
so.
there were internet threats about people attending theaters saying that they would be bombing theaters of that are showing this, and just like basically said if you show this in your theater to your general public, that is, we consider that a declaration of war. And this is like the Korean government talking to the United States and to Sony Pictures and to all that stuff. And so there was like there's interviews with Seth Rogen afterwards, who was one of the directors, I believe.
It was, yes.
And um he was saying how it was like a very strange thing that he wrote a movie, it's a stupid movie, he gets it and all that stuff. And but to have like an actual government get so close to and even just utter the words declarations of wars and things like that, like, was just, how do you navigate that, right? And one interesting thing is that he hasn't directed a movie since the interview, and people are asking him like, hey, has that
Right.
really, like, did that like spook you from it, blah blah whatever. And that's when he went into saying how difficult it was post production. But he says nope, he claims that's not the reason why, but that it was scary at times, and they even had to have security guards around them for some time because they were afraid of assassination attempts on them, rightfully so, because of all the stuff that was coming. So this was a high profile movie release. Now, what ended up happening was all the major theaters did pull it before release, and they did not show it in theaters. There were private theaters, independent theaters that still ended up showing it in theater, and thank God nothing ever happened to any of those patrons or those companies or anything like that. But the major brands did pull it off, and this was one of the first movies, like AAA title, big budget movie from a huge company that ever went, that was expected to go to, that was deserving of the big screen, but actually went straight to DVD or straight to on demand. And that was very unique in its time because movies weren't doing that. Now we're kind of used to it, especially with COVID. A lot of movies, Disney's done this 100 times and things like that. Like, instead of their movies that would have gone to theater, they're going on demand. So it seems a little more familiar. But at that time, that just wasn't happening. Um, so it's really unique that they did that. And there was a lot of controversy too, just in that decision alone. And you can imagine how this went. It was, no, we're a free society. We are not North Korea. Therefore, we don't follow your dictations. You are a dictator. That goes against everything that we're saying here. We believe in free speech. Therefore, we do want to show this in the theater. But Sony ultimately made the decision, or I guess maybe I don't want to speak on Sony's behalf. I don't know if it was Sony, but ultimately the decision was made somewhere not to show it in theaters. And that in and of itself was a huge controversy within the American people in the United States. One group saying, yeah, that's the right thing to do. This is stupid to put out a movie that talks about killing an active leader of another
Right.
country. And then the other group said, no, this is America. We have the right to free speech, free expression. We could do whatever we want. This doesn't genuinely harm anybody. Therefore, it's stupid that they're not being shown in theaters. And it was wild. So beyond that, the whole theater controversy, once the movie officially released and was available on demand and streams and all that stuff, Sony was hacked. And that was one of the main persons who oversaw the movie, the production of the movie. And they were hacked, and a ton of emails were released, private emails were released just airing out a ton of dirty laundry all over the place on a whole bunch of different topics and people and everything like that. And our government did confirm that North Korea was in part largely responsible for that hack. So they're like, we have these threats. There's actual action that has come from this, and it really did a number, according to Seth Rogen,
What
after it
what
was
were
produced.
what like I didn't remember that hacked email thing. Like what kind of stuff did they release? Like
I don't remember specifically, but I remember it was pretty. I remember it being damning.
mm,
Like you could, we could probably look up Sony hack emails, and you'll see some of the headlines that came out of that. But it was
interesting.
pretty damning for the company, for Sony itself. Um,
Hmm.
I want to know how much they made. The budget apparently was like 42 to 46 million, and it only did like 5 million in theaters because, like I said, limited release and all that stuff. But I wonder ultimately how much they've made over time now that we're sitting here at 2021.
Yeah.
But the thought of the last feelings from Seth and from Sony were that, hey, it was what it was. We released it in 2014. We're done with it. Let's just move on. We don't need to dwell on this or anything like that. So yeah, it's a very interesting movie and controversy that revolved around that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I mean it obviously was provocative, especially to North Korea. And I think it's hard to make an argument against it. Like it's but what do you think? You got any thoughts on Shy?
No, I mean, I remember those controversies because I don't know. I still feel like, and I can't back this up, but I almost feel like we went and saw it in theaters together or something, or I don't know. Like I have this like sense, like well, there was a time, Smiley, you,
You
me,
know,
and Rida went and saw a movie.
here's what you're thinking of. You're thinking of the This Is the End, which was also Seth Rogen and James Franco about the end of the world. That
Oh,
I actually just told Sarah the story because that was the first time you guys came out. You and Rido came out. Remember, you came a day earlier. Van came the following day, and so that night we went and saw This Is the End, and we went to dinner at somewhere nearby, and then the next day is when Van showed up, and then
huh.
we had some adventures. But
Gotcha. I guess
yeah,
I disliked that movie
that's probably what you're thinking
so
of.
much that I probably have wiped it from my memory because I have no
Blocked
memories
out.
of watching that movie. So,
Yeah,
um, all
that
right,
was what we saw that night.
gotcha. All right, because I remember I feel like I saw the interview in theaters, which felt very odd because it had been pulled so much and there was so much controversy about it, and you didn't know like how that was going to play out. But I don't know. Maybe I'm like I don't know. I'm not clearly remembering those days. But yeah, I remember how crazy it was that like people were pulling it, the free speech debates that Van brought up, and then like the hack was a big deal because I feel like back then there was some hacking, but like nowadays we've just become so used to data breaches, and like it just seems like a every other day thing, and it was just a big deal that all this information got pulled, and that it was just out there. So
All right.
all good
Well,
points.
quick follow up question then. I mean, it doesn't sound like there's ever would be a sequel based on the stuff that Seth Rogen went through with it. But like, would you want to see a sequel, and what would that look like to you? I'm gonna start with Shy this time because I've started with Van a couple times in the past.
I mean, the question would be like, would they really like, would they up the ante and like just play with the idea and like go dumber? And like, what if like Kim Jong Un was a zombie, and it was like zombie Kim Jong Un, and like they'd like go back in and like kill the undead leader of the North Korea. I don't know, like.
I feel like if they went anywhere, it'd be like Putin would,
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. To either change
that,
the theater, or they like,
yeah,
or they keep digging into that North Korea theme. Like, I don't
yeah.
know. Or like, because the theme of the movie was that the whole reason they did this was to become like serious, a serious show. What if like they play into that, and all of a sudden, like 20 years later, they're like these stuffy old like guys or whatever, like, and then like something else happens, they have to like deal with, or I don't know. Like, I probably would watch a sequel if they announced one.
I mean, they could make a continuation of the characters and not even have it have anything to do with North Korea or even, I guess, another country. You know, do you want to see more Dave Skylark and
Yeah.
Aaron Van? What do you think?
Dude, I think there could be like a whole Dave Skylark series spin-off. Like I would just watch the show as the show. Like how
Yeah,
hilarious that show was
yeah. Oh my!
in the few minutes
Wait,
that you get to see.
We
Dude, we
didn't
didn't even
talk
talk
about
about
that,
it
but yeah,
at
under
all.
things you like, I think that would probably go there. I mean, the Eminem part is amongst
Oh,
my
it's
favorite in
it's
any
So
movie ever.
good. So good.
amazing.
Like, the Rob
Amazing.
Lowe stuff is funny too.
It's
He
so
takes
good. Why does he leave the long parts?
and they're all like, "Ugh."
Yeah, I could barely tell.
It's so freeing.
It's
Dude, but so that I
yeah,
was it's funny. I was thinking about the beginning, and they just nail it right off the bat. They set the tone like, "Hey, sit down, strap in, because this is the kind of movie that you're gonna watch for the next hour and 52 minutes."
right.
Like with the girl singing the Korean fake national anthem song
Yeah,
to everybody, and then going directly from that into Skylark Tonight into the Eminem interview and all that stuff. It was hilarious. I was just thinking, like, dude, I would watch a Skylark Tonight spinoff,
that
like
would be
Yeah.
fun. That'd be a
Yeah.
fun
just on
spin-off.
that. Yeah. But to answer the question, if they did a sequel, I think I would like to see them do a comedy if you could. Except somehow they made Assassination Attempt of a World Leader a comedy, so I don't think this would be too much of a stretch for them. But a comedy of the rebuilding and implementation of democracy in North Korea. So they go back there to help with this because they've been influential figures. You had at the end, right? Sukhyun Park announced like, okay, for the first time, we're ever going to have the first democratic election of a new leader, and then, but
They
that's
they
gonna create
elect
like
Dave
some
Skylark.
voids. Yeah, there's gonna be create some voids and some different factions that are trying to come in and take over as the dictator. And I think there could be a whole more battle there that's consistent with kind of the small fights that they had and the blood and gore that Shai loved so much and all that stuff. So you go back and you do the implementation of a full blown democracy in North Korea. That's your sequel.
And that would open the door for Zombie Kim.
Maybe it's like a
Mm-hmm.
the first presidential debate in North Korea, and they have to go cover it and like.
Not see, Sony, if you're listening, I know you hate this movie, but you got three
Don't
writers right
appeal to
here.
Sony. It's
And
appeal to
if
Seth.
and if North
Seth
Korea, if you're listening, we're not promoting a sequel. We're not
That's true.
encouraging.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. But we will buy the rights, Sony, if you're listening to a sequel. No, we
Say,
won't.
we'll,
We won't
we'll
buy
buy
them.
the rights or we'll sell the rights. Wait, what? I
Um,
don't
Well, we
got
need
that
the
kind
rights
of money.
first to develop
All right.
the sequel.
All right.
all right. All right. Any final thoughts on the interview? Any final quotes that you didn't get to say that you really wanted to?
Yes, and we mentioned it at the beginning, but well, you guys mentioned in the show, I guess. But they despise us because they are not us. Like, there's this great early quote of they hate us because they ain't us, and then like that whole idea of like smart writing later on, like James Franco and Kim Jong Un are having a conversation, and like Kim Jong Un is just like they're talking about like how do people like I don't understand them and like ridicule them. He's like, they despise us because they are not us, and like it's just like immediately you don't even have to hear James Franco's response, which is they hate us because they ain't us. Like you just know, like in your mind, like yeah.
I have a million. I'm sure we all have a million. But one that stuck out with me today was when they were talking about when when Dave Scarlick says it's the first rule of journalism: you give the people what they want. And I'm like, and then the rebuttal is that's not the first rule of journalism. That's like the first rule of like circuses and demolition derbies.
Yeah.
And just it cracked me up just because I kind of feel like true professional journalism in our day and age has kind of gone down a little ways to where they are pandering just to their audience as opposed to
Yeah,
faxes. And I was like,
absolutely.
I just said faxes. That's not even a word, but have gone down. And I was just like, that's just a very timely, hilarious quote. So I thought that was a lot of fun.
We love the faxes. Yes. Oh man. Well, yeah. Well, see, we made it through an hour on the interview. I knew we could do it. So
Smiley, you gotta
to
give a
our
quote. You gotta give a quote. Van and I
I
just
got a
you just
quote.
gave a
Oh
quote.
God. Um, you know, with all the Lord of the Rings ones, I mean, the Boromir one that we already talked about is probably up there. Like, just because it's a deep cut, like
Yeah.
the other stuff is all like Gollum and I'm Frodo and you're my Sam. Like, that's all really high level, like very casual Lord of the Rings stuff. But like Boromir is a little bit deeper, and I like that. You're not Sam, you're Boromir, and it's great too because if you've read the books, like Boromir's like he kind of gets a little bit of a bad rap in the movies. Like he's actually, I think, a lot more um, sympathetic in the books. Like you really kind of get that. Like he's really trying to do the right thing. He just kind of has a different idea of what the right thing is compared to the rest of the party, and gets a little goes a little crazy at the end. But I just the way he says the word Boromir, like, oh, it's so good. I love it.
Yeah.
And of course, I got questions for that goat. That's always been one of my favorites.
Get the goat.
Get the goat.
The tiger has night vision goggles? He doesn't have night vision
So
goggles.
good. That's so good.
It's like a big,
Big
stripy dog.
All right, we gotta go. We're gonna
Yeah,
quote for the next
we're
30
going on. We're
minutes.
gonna just keep quoting. If you've got a favorite interview quote, if you love the interview, hated the interview, if you're on one side or other of that polarizing line that Van discussed, let us know. Drop us a line. Tell us what you think about it. We have a number of great ways to get in contact with us. We have a Twitter account at Focus Target. We have a YouTube page, Focus Target Podcast on YouTube, where all of our previous episodes are stored. We stream live on twitch.tv/Focus Target Podcast. And of course, the best way to reach us is by email, focustargetpodcast@gmail.com. So for episode 108 of the Focus Target Podcast, thanks for being with us. This is your host, Smiley.
This is Shy.
And I'm Ben. As always, cover us, Porkins. We're out.